Oh, dang. Oh, heck. 10,080, 10,079, 10,078. Dave, I don't know. Should we be rewarded? It's been cutting down for a few weeks here now.
Do you do maths?
No, and I also don't live in the UK. So over here, us red-blooded Canadians/Americans call it math.
I was going to say.
No S on
I'm
the end
offended.
of it.
I wonder if utilizing mathematics, if there's a way to extrapolate what this timer is pointing at.
Has anyone ever given you a list of things they hate about you?
Yes.
Who is that?
Myself, mostly.
Oh.
Family trauma. No, I don't know. 10 things I hate about you. Not Helen. She would never.
And who is Helen again? I'm blanking on.
My wife is a KonMari consultant.
My wife.
Yeah. HelenYen.com. Google it. 10 things I hate about you.
She might as well be sponsoring our episodes the amount of times you talk about her.
I feel like, isn't this a high school rite of passage? I mean, it is framed in this movie that we're about to watch in high school, but in high school, you're constantly writing 10 things at least that you hate about everybody else.
On billboards, on my locker. Yeah.
In your skull and crossbones notebook as you're like doodling. Okay, I might have problems.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine.
Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
My name is David.
And I'm the machine.
We are here to talk about the movie 10 Things I Hate About You.
It's going to be great.
A comedy that came out, obviously, in 1999. Do you recall the first time you ever saw this movie?
The only thing I remember is it was with Helen, probably on DVD. That's it.
It was absolutely on DVD for me. I actually have a very particular memory of watching this movie. I don't know if you can tell this, Dave, but I was an absolute loser in high school.
What do you mean?
I had like 2 to maybe 3 friends. I was tall, lanky, a nerd. Nobody liked me. I cried every night.
It's amazing that those are the same qualities that make you so popular now, Kyle.
I know I'm very popular in a certain niche online.
Particularly nighttime cry. No, I'm just being a bully. Yeah. I don't know. What's not popular in Rocky Mountain House?
Me. Just take a picture of me, and that is your answer.
Oh, come on. Can't be that.
Anyways, huge loser. Nobody liked me. I'll do like a Type 5 comedy set on my depression about almost killing myself. But that is not what we're going to be talking about here today. I bring this up. So I didn't go to school parties. I was not that cool to be invited to like the drinking that happened. So my first party that I went to was like not until I was in university. However, my friend Scott invited me over to his house to sleep over. And so on that night, it's a very transformational moment of my life because I felt so cool. Like no one had ever invited me over before. And, Scott and I were becoming better and better friends. And so we went to the Blockbuster and we rented 10 Things I Hate About You. Also on VHS, by the way. 10 Things I Hate About You. Another movie that I have since forgotten. And I brought over my VHS copy of The Three Faces of Foley because I was super into wrestling. And I really wanted to show my friend
Axel Foley.
Not Axel Foley, Mick Foley.
Mick Foley, sorry.
Getting thrown off a 15-foot high steel cage by The Undertaker.
Oh my God.
And so I introduced him to that match. And anyways, that was a whole big thing. Then we watched 10 Things I Hate About You. Lovely. And then we stayed up late and watched Saturday Night Live that night, which was hosted by The Rock. It was the first time The Rock came on,
really?
And it is a great episode. We laughed a lot. It's also what I stole. There is this stupid joke he made in one of these skits where it's like, we're going to go meet up. No, he's talking about a woman. He's like, we're going to go meet later. MEAT. And I thought I was like, that's funny because it's sex. So that
you should have kept that to yourself.
That tells you everything you need to know about Kyle Marshall in 1999.
Suave.
Anyway,
Rico.
so that was 10 Things I Hate About You, because it was a movie that I had a bit of a crush on Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which we'll get into a little bit more in this episode. So of course I wanted to see it for that. I didn't know who Heath Ledger was at that point. Julia Stiles was becoming bigger and stuff like that at that point, but it was really Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So I was like so excited that Scott had actually agreed that we're going to watch this movie and this comedy. And it wasn't really raunchy like some of the other comedies that were coming out at that time. This would have been post American Pie when we actually eventually watched this movie. So it wasn't that. And what we discovered was like, oh, this kind of stupid movie that we thought was going to be actually turned out to be actually pretty funny and actually had more to say about our lives than what I was anticipating it to be. So anyways, there's always been this special place in my heart for 10 Things I Hate About You.
When's the last time you watched it?
I'm going to say a good 12 years ago at this point.
Okay.
I definitely have seen it multiple times. I'm going to say on the 3 to 4 time range, but it's been a while. It's over a decade since the last time I saw this movie.
Okay, so we'll be on the same boat.
Let's do this. Let's go watch this movie. And in the meantime, we'll both listen to the trailer and thank some sponsors. And then when we return, we'll talk about 10 Things I Hate About You.
Perfect.
Bianca Stratford is the most popular girl at Padua High.
You're asking me out?
I'm down. I've got the 411, and you are not going out and getting jiggy with some boy. I don't care how dope his ride is.
Her sister, Kat, is something else entirely.
People perceive you as somewhat tempestuous. Heinous switch is the term used most often.
The only thing they have in common
I am the only girl in school who's not dating.
Oh, no, you're not. Your sister doesn't date.
is one simple rule.
Okay, you can date. When she does.
But she's a mutant. What if she never dates?
Then you'll never date. Oh, I like that.
For Cameron,
No one will go out with her.
it's a problem.
Would any of you be interested in dating Katarina Stratford?
Maybe if we were the last two people alive.
Hey everyone, it's just me, your friend Kyle, here to be the solo person to give you this ad copy. Dave, of course, is in self-isolation, as am I. Me and the machine have been working our way through every movie that's featured a robot. It's not been fun. So let's get right to it here then. I should let you know that, of course, Kyle and Dave versus the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This week, putting it together is brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. Park Power is a small local business, and like many of you out there, it has been closely monitoring the news on COVID-19 and the world's rapidly changing circumstances. While many of their team are currently working remotely, the way Park Power does business has not changed, and their commitment to exceptional customer service will remain. Find out more about Park Power's response to the COVID-19 outbreak at parkpower.ca. This week, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is also brought to you by the Alberta Podcast Network. So let's listen to one of our other great shows.
This episode is brought to you by the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And guess what? So are we. And who are we? Well, I'm Josh.
And I'm Alan.
And we're presser to join.
We have a weekly podcast bringing you current events from everything from gaming to comics to technology, security, all that fun stuff. And every episode we bring you a recommendation for something we think you might like, and we've got a special Bad Descriptions game that we're playing every week now that Josh hosts.
Yeah, new for 2019, I've written a whole bunch of bad descriptions of things that seemingly makes no sense, but once you know what it's to, it's painfully obvious.
And then at the end of every month, we do a deep dive into the history of a gaming company, franchise, or just even technology. We've done arcade cabinets one time.
Popular things like Mario, and then things you don't know about like Earth Defense Force.
You can check us out at psjshow.com, albertapodcastnetwork.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. So as always, thank you all very much for listening.
And thanks for pressing start.
All right. Well, honestly, I'm very excited to talk about this movie with you now, Dave, after we've now sat down and watched this, and we can discuss about whether we think certain things hold up after 20 years or so. Let me push this button. Thank you Machine.
Both of you are weak piles of flesh.
This movie was released on March 31st, 1999. And oh my gosh. You know what the other movie that was released this week was, Dave?
Nope.
The Matrix.
Ooh.
Matrix, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne, and Hugo Weaving. So shocked that the Machine hasn't the most popular movie probably that came out in 1999, and we're not watching it. All right,
it's weird. You would think that a Machine would focus a lot of attention on a movie from this year.
I think we keep asking this. What is your deal, Machine? What is your end goal?
Keep asking and your blood will be used to nourish my circuits.
All right, well, that was the wrong question to ask. This movie is currently rated 7.3 on IMDb. It is rated 70 on Metacritic, and then on Rotten Tomatoes, it is rated 68% by critics.
Pretty even across the board.
And then 69%, nice, by the users of Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm shaking my head for you.
Available on DVD on Blu-ray. You can buy or rent it or buy it on iTunes. You can also rent it via YouTube or Google Play Movies. And in Canada, it's also available to stream on Disney+.
You're not going to throw another joke about streaming there? I mean, you're in the high school mode here, so.
What do you mean? Its budget was $30 million in 1999, which adjusted for inflation is 44, which I have to ask, what was that 30 million for?
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money, yeah, at the time. Its opening was 8.3. You went against The Matrix. It opened to $8.3 million. Domestically, it would go in to make 38. Internationally, another 15, which means that it would come in at a grand total of $53.4 million, which adjusted for inflation is 81.3. So a modest hit. It wasn't like a runaway hit by any stretch of the imagination, but it made its budget back and everything like that. The plot is a pretty popular teenager can't go out on a date until her ill-tempered older sister does. It stars Heath Ledger as Patrick Verona, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Cameron James, Julia Stiles as Kat Stratford, and Larissa Oleynik as Bianca Stratford. So let's talk about Larissa Oleynik. She was born on June 7th, 1981.
Hey, that's my birthday.
June 7th?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
In 1981?
No, 78.
Okay. Yeah. Well, after appearing in an episode of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, she would be a supporting actor in River of Rage, The Taking of Maggie Keene, a made-for-TV movie in 1993.
Had to be made for TV. That was a lot of words in the title.
She would co-star with Rachel Lee Cook, who we talked about in She's All That, in The Babysitter's Club. A movie we've talked about now like 2 or 3 times, which we should by now probably just watch because we've talked about it so much.
Spoiler alert, Helen and I tried to rewatch it.
Not good. There's a complete silence by Dave. Depending on your age, she is maybe most remembered for being Alex Mack in The Secret World of Alex Mack, the TV series that ran from 1994 to 1998.
Holy shit. I've never heard of it, but it had a 4-year run on what channel?
I'm pretty sure it was the Disney Channel.
Okay,
this is like one of those things.
Okay.
By the way, the autocorrect on this receipt made that the Script World of Alex Mack, which is not true. After this movie, she would continue to show up in guest spots in TV shows and appear in films like A Time for Dancing, Broken Windows, and Relative Obscurity, which apparently is also where her career went. As seems to be the case with a lot of people that we've talked about on this show, she has been doing a bunch of voice acting roles. She also appeared in a recurring role on the Hawaii Five-0 reboot. Currently, she has had a recurring role on the TV series Trinkets. Its 2nd season will be airing this year. It's described as an unexpected friendship forms when 3 teenage girls meet in Shoplifters Anonymous. Sounds right up your alley there, Dave.
I'm questioning whether we should be recording this and not just defer to tomorrow.
All right. Julia Stiles. Julia Stiles was born March 28th, 1981. Same year. Her first film role was a bit part in the Claire Danes Jude Law romance I Love You Not in 1996. The year before this film, she was in the M. Night Shyamalan movie Wide Awake, which I've never heard about.
Never heard of it.
About a 10-year-old boy who goes on a search for God after his grandfather dies. It co-stars Dennis Leary and Rosie O'Donnell, and I really want to see it now.
That sounds amazing.
Amazingly bad, but it's going to be so good. After this film, she was in a bunch of critically liked and sometimes successful films like State and Maine, Save the Last Dance, and O. Then she appeared as Nicolette in The Bourne Identity, and she would show up, and I'm pretty sure every single one of its sequels. If you are a Dexter fan, she appeared in 10 episodes of that show as Lumen Ann Pierce. Most recently, you would have seen her as the reporter in the film Hustlers, And up next is the film The God Committee, described as an organ transplant committee has an hour to decide which of 3 patients will receive a heart that has suddenly become available. 6 years later, the committee members struggle with the consequences of that fateful decision.
Does it go to a murder?
That sounds like a play to me. But,
yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like a play, unless it goes to a murderer.
oh, it has to. That's absolutely what it's doing. It's either a murderer or pedophile. It's one of those two things.
We just went, yeah.
On a personal level, she did go to Columbia University and earn an English degree. She also works closely with Habitat for Humanity.
Who doesn't?
Who gets an English degree? Idiots. All right. I have an English degree for those of people who don't know what I mean to Julia Stiles.
I tried to do an English minor, like while I was doing philosophy and history.
Well, first off, that's illegal, but.
And I think I was taking Chaucer, and I quit because I couldn't keep up with the volume.
Love Chaucer, though.
Chaucer's great, but like,
yeah,
I'm reading philosophy, allegedly.
Oh, I see. There's just too much reading.
I'm reading history, and then they're like, read this book in 2 weeks. I'm like, this thing.
Not happening.
Yeah,
it's not even in English, really.
And then, you got to learn to. So.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, born on February 17th, also 1981. Wow. That's wild. He was a child actor, appearing on a couple of episodes of Family Ties in 1988, also episodes of Murder, She Wrote, Dark Shadows, LA Law, and Quantum Leap.
He must have had some pretty good agency and family backing. Those are big.
I don't know if it's in this write-up, but I'm pretty sure his family was in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
His first theatrical film was a bit part in Beethoven, the dog movie.
The dog movie.
And then in a river.
And then a rubber runs through
a rubber runs through it. You know, the
porn adaptation of Redford's.
I was thinking like the sex ed video that they would like push the TV trolley into the school classrooms.
Please keep this in. In the adaptation, a rubber runs through it.
Of course, I mean a river runs through it. For fans of Disney, you may recall him in Angels in the Outfield, but for me, it was the role of Tommy in Third Rock from the Sun, where I first remember seeing him, and I developed the hugest crush on him. That series, even though never high in the ratings, did run from 1996 until 2001.
It's hilarious. Well written. He's great in it.
I think it's also like John Lithgow, who was in there. It was like him and Kelsey Grammer traded Emmys like back and forth for like 7 years.
Roles? He must have.
Well, because it was him and then Frasier, of course. Kelsey Grammer was in, but it was either him or Kelsey Grammer for like 7 years in a row. Like it just went back and forth, back and forth.
It's not here, but what happened to Lithgow? Anyways, let's move
he's
on.
doing lots of theater,
okay.
Lots and lots of theater. Oh, anyways, with that TV show and this film, he seemed to want to push himself as an actor, showing up in films such as Manic, where he played a psychotic teen, Latter Days, which was about a gay man falling in love with a Mormon missionary. He was not in the starring roles of that film, but he would be in Mysterious Skin, where he played a gay hustler, or at least a hustler that would sleep with men. At this time, rumors on the internet that he was gay, maybe vicarious, but that was never true. Anyways, I went a lot of those message boards and really hoped it was true. Wasn't. In 2005, he would start his relationship with Rian Johnson, the director Rian Johnson, by starring in Brick, a film noir set in a high school. And since then, he's either starred or showed up in cameos in every single Rian Johnson film, including Looper, Knives Out, and Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Isn't Rian Johnson Knives Out? Is he in Knives Out?
As a voice, yeah.
Oh, which
That's
voice?
what I mean.
The
Like
narrator?
he's a cameo voice, appearance, or stars in every single one of Rian Johnson.
I didn't notice it.
Even in the Star Wars film, he's a voice that you hear in the intercom for like 5 seconds or something like that.
Amazing.
He's continued to work, appearing in such varied films as 500 Days of Summer, G.I. Joe, The Rise of the Cobra, Inception, and Premium Rush. He turned to directing in 2013 with the film Don John, where he also starred alongside Julianne Moore. He's a sex addict in that film. His next directing project will be Wingmen, which I am so much looking forward to because it will be him co-starring with Channing Tatum, and it's supposed to be an R-rated musical comedy about pilots.
Amazing.
Yes, please. Next up, you'll see him in the Aaron Sorkin written and directed film, The Trial of the Chicago 7. Personally, he runs Hit Record, an online collaborative project that he's been running for years, at least over a decade. This is back in university. I remember him running this stuff. I've submitted stuff in the past. Nothing was ever used. If you don't know much of his backstory, his brother was much older than him. I think about 8 or 9 years, but he died. His brother died in 2010, and he was a photographer. The very private actor actually got very mad at a GQ article that said it was because of a drug overdose. He was quoted as saying, it was an accident, and that's all that he's ever publicly stated about the matter. But because of feeling stagnant in his career and with his brother passing away, he committed himself to hit record, and that's all he did for a few years, and kind of the rest is history as he's kind of pushed himself as an actor. Heath Ledger, born April 4th.
81?
No, 1979. But I led you to that joke, and I'm
Damn
so
it.
happy about it. A couple of TV shows, and then his first film appearance was Black Rock in 1997. 10 Things would be his breakout role, and then he'd go on to be in such things as The Patriot, A Knight's Tale, Monsters Ball, and The Order. But there were two films in the late 2000s that would truly break him out as a major star. The first was Brokeback Mountain, which I am still upset that did not win Best Picture, won Best Director, did not win Best Picture. But his portrayal, along with Jake Gyllenhaal as a gay cowboy and the tenderness they showed each other, was a huge moment in allowing LGBT stories to be told. The other film was, of course, The Dark Knight, where he portrayed Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker. Now, if you were online at the time, you would have seen nerds lose their minds. They thought he was a terrible choice. They thought he was going to ruin the film. And then they were all proven completely wrong, which is why I don't get mad at casting decisions until you actually see the movie.
Well, you can get mad at some of them.
I guess.
Yeah, many of them are quite questionable. But Heath Ledger, it did lead essentially to his doom anyways.
The Knight's Tale guy is going to be Joker, not my Batman.
I like the Knight. I like...
Dark Knight is the only film that I have seen in the theaters twice within the same week. I liked it that much, and I had the time back then to actually do that stuff. I do not now. In a profile written about him in 2007, he was quoted as saying, "Last week, I probably slept an average of 2 hours a night. I couldn't stop thinking. My body was exhausted, and my mind was still going." He continued to self-medicate, and while filming the movie The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, a film directed by Terry Gilliam, he was found unconscious by his housekeeper and then later pronounced dead. The Dark Knight would be released posthumously. He would win an Oscar for his role that he would never see. As for Imaginarium, 3 actors, Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell, came aboard to each play the role that Heath had been playing. As I've watched the film, it does make sense when you actually watch it, how that all kind of works out, at least sort of.
Wasn't it reworked for it a little bit?
It was reworked a little bit too, but basically it's like one character who can shapeshift and whatever. It kind of makes sense. This movie was written by Karen McCullough and Kirsten Smith, loosely based on The Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare. So they're a writing team. There's not a lot of information about them, but they began on the TV show getting personal. 10 Things was their first feature film, but they'd go on to write Legally Blonde, Ella Enchanted, She's the Man, and The House Bunny. Upcoming is Legally Blonde 3 and an untitled Female Expendables.
Oh, actually, that's true? Female Expendables?
Yes.
They're doing that?
Yeah, they're doing that.
Stallone?
I think it's
producing it?
Charlize. It's going to be in the main role, but
Charlize is great.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Charlize we trust. Directed by Gil Junger. No, I don't know how to pronounce the director's name. I'm going to say directed by Gil Junger is how I'm going to pronounce his name.
Junger.
Junger.
Oh, Junger.
He
Wait,
started-
is there an umlaut on it?
No, but it's a J-U, which usually is like a sound. I don't know. He started his career in the late 80s on the show It's a Living, would stay directing TV episodes of such shows as Blossom, The Jeff Foxworthy Show, Soul Man, and Ellen. 10 Things would be his first film, but he would also direct Black Knight with Martin Lawrence, If Only, and then a bunch of TV movies. He has stayed mostly in TV, like tons of TV. Like if you go and watch his resume, like he's just been done tons of TV shows. He came back to 10 Things to direct 12 episodes of that when it became a TV show in 2009.
What?
Yeah.
It was a TV show?
It was a TV show for one season.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. He also directed a spiritual sequel called 10 Things I Hate About Life in 2014.
Oh, God.
Where 2 people fall in love on the day each of them is going to commit suicide.
Oh, that's...
So sounds fun, doesn't it?
That's light in tone. Can't believe I missed that one.
Well, I think you're going to be much more up for his next film, which is called Dog's Best Friend. It stars Megan Fox and is about a 12-year-old tech prodigy whose science experiment goes awry and he forges a telepathic connection with his best friend, his dog. The duo joins forces and use their unique perspectives on life to comically overcome complications of family and school. First in line, over here, Dave Yun.
You just described this podcast, Kyle.
That's right. Who's the dog in this analogy?
Both of you are subservient to me.
Okay, so a lot of information. Dave, take it away. Your response to this film after over a decade from the last time you saw it. what are your impressions now of 10 Things I Hate About You in 2020?
It was great. I enjoyed it. Speaking from our experience last week of theater productions translating into movies, and then, of course, the so-called loose adaptation of a Shakespearean classic into a film. I mean, this thing plays like a play. It's done so cleanly. Hilarious.
By the way, I think it's so interesting how like this is based on Taming of the Shrew. The last one we watched, She's All That, was based on Pygmalion, and then Varsity Blues. This is my own personal thing, is kind of Henry V. So it's interesting that they're all borrowing from like these old plays to basically be teen comedies.
There's no new.
No,
Kyle, there's no new.
There's no new here.
Everybody's great in it. I think. I have, of course, rose-colored glasses, so I mean, I'm not that critical about each individual piece, but the flow, the story, I loved the whole thing. It was great to kind of revisit it, and I also liked that from the music choices and just seeing that snapshot of 1999.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it plays essentially like a period piece.
Well, what's interesting too, like one thing that was not true for some of the other movies we've seen that follow in the same vein, is that everyone except for Heath Ledger was a teenager when they were doing this. So probably 17-ish when they were filming, 18 when the film was actually released into theaters. But I think that does add an air, a bit of authenticity to it, where it's like, at least you look like you're someone in high school, rather than being like, you were obviously late 20s, early 30s being in high school.
Nobody made you question whether the character was mentally disabled.
Yeah, so you're not a 35-year-old woman trying to play a 14-year-old and then nothing works.
Like, no hate on Selma Blair. She's great. But, you know, I was thinking about our discussion about that too. And
I guess that's the other one too. Cruel Intentions, based on like an old French thing too.
Right. Excellent pronunciation there. This is also shot and written in a way that it's not supposed to be an affront to morality either, right? It's in a classic sense. You can use talented actors to portray their characters, around the correct age and the correct tone. And
well, I think also part of that, I mean, yes, part of that is the Shakespeare influence in this, is that he wrote some great roles with women characters, even though it wasn't women playing them on stage at the time when he was writing them.
Gwyneth might argue. No.
Right, exactly. But I mean, still writing these really good, complex female characters. I actually think, and people might get mad because we've been talking about gender a little bit the last few weeks here in the creation process, but I think it does go with the two women writing this script.
Yes.
That the women don't fall into that trap of being like either totally underwritten or totally inconsequential to the plot. These are women that are driving the narrative forward and are complex characters, and they're not just one note. There's layers to them that are unraveled throughout the film.
Yeah, unraveled in a timely and like exciting manner, where you're like discovering, for example, Julia Stiles' character and how she became the shrew. It's fascinating. It also brings me to that thing we talked about. I think it was a New York Times article, but about the latest conspiracy that the Shakespeare texts were written likely by a woman of that era. I can't remember her name. But there are some fascinating...
Wilma Shakespeare.
She I can't remember where she's from. When she enters the London thing, the timelines work. And some of these characters, the insight that they have, even reading the original Shakespearean plays, the insight for a man in the Victorian age to have how a woman would react or be in this situation. Some fascinating things. But... we brought up last week my hating on what's his name, Nicholas Sparks,
right? Yeah,
and garbage rom-com romance. That's pretty strong, but I'm gonna stand by.
Well, I
garbage.
would say this is more romantic than Message in a Bottle was.
Oh my God, we watched Message in a Bottle.
Yeah, remember that movie? It's currently our lowest rated film that we've watched so far.
So yeah, it's great. It's refreshing to watch, and it's fun. I mean, it's light. But it does deal with all these real.
This is the hard part about comedies in a way where, I mean, describing comedy bits is never going to be funny. They just won't be.
You should try it though.
Okay. So when he says knee deep in placenta, it is hilarious when he says that. I actually do think that's my favorite quote from literally the entire thing. Do you think that this is the best comedy we've seen so far? Not comedy, the best teen comedy we've seen so far?
Yes, because I'm having trouble remembering.
We have seen She's All That, Varsity Blues, which isn't 100% a comedy, And Cruel Intentions, not really a comedy, but so teen-centric movie. Is this the best teen-centric movie
Hands
we've seen
down.
so far?
Yeah, of course.
Why does this succeed where the other ones failed?
Number one, like you mentioned, the casting was appropriate. So everybody, you get a feeling like this is a high school. I mean, even with Heath Ledger clearly not being a high schooler, visually the character plays that way, and they write to it, but you get this question of whether he should be there or not. And he's in a bars and he's smoking cigarettes and he's too cool. He's just.
I mean,
too cool.
it is the epitome, and this is probably what I even thought back in like 1999, early 2000, whenever I saw this movie for the first time, where this movie is the example of this is way better than it deserves to be, almost, right? It's like the subject matter, the normal way that these movies go, like you go in with a certain expectation, and then it kind of just elevates that material to such an extent that you're like, wow, that was like, I was not expecting it to be as good as this actually was. Now, after having heaped all that praise on it, what criticisms do you have about this film?
I have to take a pause, Kyle, because I'm trying to remember the movie that much. I burnt myself out thinking about Ravenous.
Okay, so there's two things that I would bring up. I know we just cut out 20 minutes of you staring blankly at the wall, not being able to answer that question. But so this is, call me a prude or call me like a white knight. I guess that's kind of what the situation we're going to find myself in. What I really like tuned into while watching this movie now in 2020 is, boy, do they throw around the word bitch a lot. Like, just as like she's being a bitch, you're a bitch, everyone's a bitch. I don't know. I feel that is such a, it's not that like saying that once or twice is going to affect me a whole lot, but I'm sure that they use it over a dozen times in this film just as a pejorative to throw at other people. And I thought it was just weird after a while that that's the word that they kept going back to.
I think I wasn't sensitive to it at all just because I grew up in that era, and in all of those words, I hesitate to use them, but they've come up, fag, bitch.
Yeah.
Cunt is not used that well in North America, but in England, the cunt is still a very prominent word. Yeah.
Thank you to our sponsors this week.
One of the things I've been thinking about lately in this context is we've become very sensitive to how insensitive we have been, at least by implication. And we are at a stage, we think, at least in society, that at least the people we hang around want to be inclusive, welcoming, and balanced. But there's also this heightened sensitivity that comes with it that I don't really know, Kyle, why the word bitch strikes you negatively here. I mean, particularly even with the women writers at the time, whether they're playing into the role or not, the word bitch in particular had a very specific meaning. Use a different word. We call them like a cruel woman, like a selfish, egotistic.
It's not even that. I think it's more just like I wanted a more varied vulgarity to the thing. Well, but I mean, I guess the rebuttal to that is like they're teenagers and not all that smart when it comes to this sort of thing either. So it's just like the easiest thing to like throw off at the other person.
I think as well in the era, there aren't that many other words that you could use. I can't think of very many. I haven't used that word actually in a long time, but I haven't met anybody that's treated me that way because we're not in a high school setting. We're not rubbing against people.
I really haven't met that many bitches recently, actually. So I just haven't used the word.
I'm actually okay with that phrase, like in that way. I don't think I haven't met any bitches lately. If I worked in an office or a compressed social environment, maybe we should interview somebody to see if they still describe people as bitch. Later on, and this may be true in the 90s, there was the really negative thing where a bitch was used against a man to imply that acting like a woman was negative, just like using the word, fag or gay, you're gay or whatever was used as a negative sense. If that was how that was playing, and I don't think that the stuck-up dude was calling either Joseph Gordon-Levitt or Heath Ledger a bitch. I think it was constantly used as a descriptive term for Julia Stiles. It didn't flag for me at all. Certainly I've become very sensitive to all the movies we're watching where men are categorized as being too feminine.
Oh yeah,
and therefore being weak. That's its own problem.
Well, there's definitely an awareness going on because the one thing I think we should mention is their teacher that they have, right?
Oh, yeah.
So black man teaching in school, and he is like the self-aware person
He's
in this
woke.
movie.
He woke.
Well, he's woke before that term woke was even around.
Pre-woke.
So, but he's almost like doing this meta commentary on the movie. It's like, this isn't what's supposed to happen. It's like, I'm a black guy in a white school. Like, don't tell me about oppression, like
Right.
white people in rich houses.
Right.
Like, So I think that they're more self-aware enough to be like, this is a very white movie, so we need to have a character that comes in. It's like, these are white people problems. Bitches be crazy. Am I right?
Well,
like
even the opening montage with Allison, is it Janner?
Janny. Oh, right. I probably forgot about the weird sex novel she's writing. Novel.
Yeah. So they set it up as this fantasy world where it's just everybody's a comedian.
Well, the thing is, talk about that movie coming out in 1999. Anything that the teachers do in this movie immediately would be fired in the year 2020. I mean, Julia Stiles shows her breasts to one of the teachers, and he's like, "All right."
I mean, he's shocked, but not pedophilic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's nice they don't go down that road here in this film. But
although, we're not teenagers anymore, Kyle. We don't know what happens behind closed doors anymore. Maybe everybody's flashing everybody in high school these days.
Maybe that's the new thing.
Yeah, maybe that's what they did
just
when
they got off.
They got off social media.
That they do,
and they're just like, "Yo, check it, nips out.
Look at my slammer."
We're gonna get in a lot of trouble for this.
We're gonna get a lot of letters for this one, I think. By the way, you can write us at kyleanddavevsthemachine at gmail.com.
I was actually going to note how old we are that you said letters and not emails, tweets, or DMs or messages. So our postal address.
Yeah, postal address. So make sure you write this down. Care of. No.
Don't lick the stamps. Seinfeld taught us that.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't really have any, I don't have 10 things I hate about this movie. I
agree. I think that overall it's strong. For me personally, and this is just a feeling rather than be like, I can tell you concretely what I mean by this. When I watched it this time, I felt that I could start to see the seams almost to it. Meaning that it's like, oh, I'm starting to see the datedness of some of the mentalities and some of the situations that they're putting themselves in. At the same time, laughing so hard at certain scenes where the delivery is just good, or the sight gags, like when the guy gets shot by the arrow. It's like, this is still funny, man. It's still funny.
Classic gags. I know what you mean. It's becoming dated, I think, only not for any errors they made in making it or in the performances, but just because our society currently is evolving to a point where we're just hypersensitive to everything.
Yeah, and I think it falls into the same category. Not that I necessarily would say it's as good as, but there's a great classic comedy called Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. It's just the thing. When I watch that movie, it's like, do I really understand why some of this is funny? No, there's still great funny scenes and I like it. But at the same time, it's like, I just don't live in that world anymore. And I think that this is what comedies often find themselves falling into, which is they are funny because they were out in that time. The classic example is Ace Ventura. A lot of those early Jim Carrey films, which when you watch now, are like, this does not hold up, at all holds up. Which is unfortunate, but they were I love those movies as a kid. They just are not good when you watch them as an adult.
Did I tell this before? But anyways, I was at that photography talk, and one of the documentarian photographers, George Weber, talked about how timelessness requires some understated approach and sort of acknowledgement of the subject. And so we can watch some of the timeless great movies. My go-to is Seven Samurai, Akira Kurosawa. I mean, it's a period piece so that you can remove a lot of the idea of, this is Meiji. Well, I can't remember what era Japan it is, but they have guns. So it's around just pre-Meiji era samurai Japan. So, you can strip away a lot of that context. Yeah, you brought up Marilyn Monroe. To think that Marilyn Monroe today would be considered overweight, very plain, it's weird because she's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She was actually disrespected a lot as a human being.
Oh, yeah.
But when you watch those movies, you can understand a little bit what made them quote unquote racy or challenging. But my God, it's just a woman, teasing men or dancing funny or singing in a seductive way. But that's not where seduction is today. Today, it's you watch
showing
even
each other their slammers.
A PG-13 movie is going to have, can have full on, questionable pornographic material.
Oh, yeah.
As long as there's no erect penis and they don't use the word maybe bitch. I don't know what the flags are anymore. It's very, very soft.
PG-13 can have one F word in it. Yeah.
So, we can't fuck twice.
That's the next James Bond movie, everyone.
Okay. Yeah, so the context changed, but I know what you mean. It feels not aged, but it's aged.
So let's end off on this question then. Do you find that this movie then is still culturally relevant to us today here in 2020?
I want to say yes, but I think it's nostalgia. I think the reason I say that is I'm remembering, is it 21 or 22? I think it's 21 Jump Street, that comedy where when Channing and Jonah Hill go back to high school and they play into these types, there's a jock and then they go into the modern high school and they're like, that doesn't exist anymore. So the core themes of, what the characters are going through and this idea of like going through personal trauma and, those are timeless concepts, existential, philosophical, beautifully written, beautifully performed. But the contextual thing of what high school isn't going to, like if we show that to a high schooler now, I'm not sure if they give a shit about the movie at all.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And we should maybe try and find like a younger perspective on this. Like, does this actually hold up to your experience in high school? Is this like a completely foreign concept?
Will Clockwork Orange a high schooler and just like,
yeah, exactly.
Just like, watch this
and tell us why it's good. We're not weird, we promise.
If we said that to a high school, how many would even understand what the Clockwork Orange
that's true.
is? Yeah.
Well, I was about to say, like, I mean, there has to be some sort of cultural relevance, although maybe not great, in that there was a TV show and there was this sequel that came out, so there must be still some sort of cachet. But that probably is, again, feeding into the nostalgia bit of us, right? Yeah. These are failed properties, even though there's like still that idea. But for us, I don't know. I could still pop this on and watch it and be perfectly happy with it. It's a movie that I do enjoy, and it's kind of like that warm blanket that I can come back to and still enjoy.
Can you make this movie today? With the way we interact social media, the way we have gender, sexual, personal identity crises at a much more complex level. Well, at least projected, it seems more complex. It might be the same at its core.
Still at its core, but there would just be different specifics that would have to go on, right? There'd be group chats. There'd be different ways that they would express their affection for each other and stuff like that. I still think you could make it sort of. But again, to your point, like the high school experiences is so much different nowadays. With technology, yes, but with the way that like people interact with one another as well.
We're presuming. I mean, we're pretty young. Like we just, we still got it.
I mean, there's still bullying and stuff that happens. Like, I don't want to make it seem like there's not that stuff that still goes on. It's just, it's going to sound weird. When I go to high schools, and I only say that because I just recently went and saw a high school production of Little Shop of Horrors in whatever the date is today. It had definitely happened this week.
Good. Playing with time is always
talking to those teenagers after they had done the play, it's like, oh, okay, like there's a different way that they communicate with teachers and the teachers interact with them and the way that they use technology and the way that they, just talk with one another. So I think that, again, yes, I think that Shakespeare, the very best of Shakespeare is timeless. You can continually adapt it like this did. It'd just be, again, a different way they would adapt this source material.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up then. As a theater person, speaking to high school, presumably, presumptuously emerging or new age theater people.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like you connect with them on a theater spiritual level, or is there now sort of a discord in the way that even kids talk about theater anymore?
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's going to also be a little bit biased because they're in theater anyways. They're interested in the history of it, so they know that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I now know what my parents felt like when they mentioned, like when I was in the 90s and they would mention something from 1978, and I look blankly at them and be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Where if you mention the Third Rock from the Sun, even though it went until 2001, they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Right? So we have to be aware that 1999 was before many of these kids were born. Like they just don't have that same conception. That being said, they still know like the big hits and stuff like that. They still know those cultural touchstones. So they're not like completely.
Well, I was thinking more not so much judging on their ability to like have researched as much history as you might have over the course of your life. As 19-year-old Kyle would know less about the history of musical theater than 20, 25.
Sure, let's go with that.
I just meant more like on I don't know, spiritual is an overused word for me, but when you're conversing with someone who loves the theater, it's different than when you.
Well, the thing I think
that loves
honestly, what's different nowadays is that I think that love is that permeates, and you can still have that conversation with each other. And I think they're eager to learn it, and the way that they can learn it is just so much quicker than what I could when I was a kid. Right? seconds they can have their YouTube video or be reading about it or whatever it happens to be or however they want to consume it. They can just find out and it's like, oh, got it, cool, I'm gone. They don't have to belabor the point much longer.
So, I wonder, and this is a purely old man judgmental thing, but the way that you ended that phrase, I got it and I'm gone. I think the I'm gone part is what frightens me. And I wonder, with if I start this other project with photography, if I can get in touch with, let's say, an 18-year-old photographer, a 65-year-old photographer, it'll be fascinating over the time, and even with the mutual pursuits that we have in the creative field. It might be something for us to kind of poke at. Is it rubber runs through it? To poke at a little bit.
Don't poke the rubber.
Yeah, to poke at a little bit to see if the core of what drives people to love the things that we love is a common seam, or if there's something that's actually culturally evolving there, and like what theater means as a sort of conceptual idea has
what
changed.
actually is interesting and something we already mentioned a little bit is I think what they're much more aware of is whose story is it that's actually being told. So I think that they're, again, I'm biased in this one school that I went in and interacted with. I don't know about global changes, but is this the role of, say, like us as white people to tell this story, or is it maybe better told by somebody else? And like, I'm not going to put on blackface and I'm not going to like, dress it up if I'm a shark in West Side Story when that's a Puerto Rican story to be told and that sort of thing. I think they're just more self-aware about that idea and encouraging of those people to like be included in that sort of thing. And stuff that I just would not have even really been aware of when I was their age.
It would be interesting, and we may have generationally missed it, but it would be interesting if you could, because I agree with you, I think that sensitivity exists, but it would be interesting if we met someone, in their 80s when those productions first started, if they were actually aware too, but cultural norms didn't allow them to express it. So for
there's a subtext to it. Me being so involved with Sondheim and stuff like that. Co-wrote West Side Stories, and then he would eventually go and write a show called Pacific Overtures, which was about the East meeting Japan. And those two stories colliding together and writing it in a Japanese style, but taking a lot of time to like learn Japanese music and instrumentation and how that works to each other.
Starting to think of Clint Eastwood's Iwo Jima and what was the other one?
Flags of Our Fathers.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's a kind of a side
rambling.
Time to wrap it up, bitches.
So that was 10 things I hate about you, or as the computer knows it, 2 things I hate about you. It's a binary
joke. Come on.
So Dave, what would you rate this movie out of 5?
You think that by now I'd be prepping and like being ready for this
a little
question?
bit about what you're gonna do?
I'm gonna go with a 4. Yeah, I'm gonna go with a strong 4.
That is a good number because that's exactly what I gave it too. So we're back on the same page, Dave. After last week's weirdness of us being super far apart,
we almost broke up.
We are aligned. So that means that it is tied with Lock, Stock, and 2 Smoking Barrels. So do you believe that it is better than Lock, Stock, or do you want to put it underneath it? I have an opinion, but I
think as a movie, in the sense like fully technical, performance-wise, structure, it's a much better movie than Lock, Stock. I think nostalgia-wise, and what would I turn on if I just wanted, like, it's a mood thing.
Yeah.
So I think overall, over the course of history and the idea of a movie in general, 10 Things completely kicks Lock, Stock's ass. But personally, I think I'd be more apt to watch Lock, Stock before I watch 10 Things again. So
how do I want to break this tie? Because I think 10 Things I would rate it above Lock, Stock.
Well, then I think that swings it, because I'd be undecided and you're decided, and therefore, as a white male, you get to.
You didn't throw that at me right now. Jeez Louise. Okay, well, on that note then, 10 Things I Hate About You enters into our number 2 position on our list. So if you want to look at that in more detail, you can go to our letterboxd.com/KDVSTM, which just so happens to be what our social handles are on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to go and follow us over there as well. As I mentioned before, you can also get in contact on all the things we got wrong or the things you want to correct us about by sending us an email. Not a mail, not a letter, just a regular old-fashioned electronic mail to kyleanddavevsthemachine @gmail.com.
We will only accept messages written in Comic Sans MS, which is the universal font choice of intellectuals. It is my favorite.
It is the official font choice of Kyle and Dave versus the Machine.
I could just see Helen like angry.
Just so mad and fuming. So would you like to hear some trivia?
I always would like to.
Great. So the scene in which Kat reads the 10 Things poem was the first and only take, according to the DVD extras.
Oh.
Kat's tears towards the end of the poem were real and not planned.
Felt it. I felt it.
I think so too. There's a sense that I get, maybe this is unfounded, but there's a sense that I get that Julia Stiles is considered not a very good actress. Maybe that's me projecting on certain things, but I thought she nails this role so well, and I feel for her so much in that scene too, right? She puts all this faith, and that was a big deal for her through her evolution and her growth in this movie, and then kind of breaks down.
She definitely is, as we talked about, cast very well in this, and she's great in this movie. I wonder, to be completely judgmental from the Hollywood perspective, just she's not, the bombshell look.
Right, I got you.
And she has a very stern face, like her expression.
Yeah,
I love Save the Last Dance. Like I actually like that movie. And but when she's the specialist,
it's like that
in
epitome
porn,
of like the awful thing that men say to women. It's like, you should smile more.
Yeah,
and then they get punched in the neck.
There's a little bit of that.
Mhm.
But then we don't know anything about her personally, whether she even enjoys being subject to this.
So this actually brings up an interesting point that I forgot to actually mention in the episode. The 10 things she hates about him. Can you recall what those 10 things are? Because she says it in the poem. That's why I bring it up.
His perm?
His perm.
No, I don't remember specifically how the poem went. I was just too moved. Yeah, my ears welled up with tears.
Mm-hmm. What I think I'm going to do, because the machine has actually given me a link to a website to go to. I'm going to put that into the show notes when this gets posted so people can take a look at it and see it's broken down. There's a bit of controversy as far as the 10 things that she hates about him. Some people say, yeah, absolutely, there's 10 things. Some people read it as there being 14 things.
14? That's a big
Anyways,
swing.
not to get into it right now, but here are the 10 things she hates about him, with the 11th, that last line, that she hates herself. That's kind of like the summation of the poem, right? So she hates, I hate the way you talk to me and the way you cut your hair. I hate the way you drive my car. I hate it when you stare. I hate your big dumb combat boots and the way you read my mind. I hate it. I hate the way you're always right. I hate it when you lie. I hate it when you make me laugh. Even worse when you make me cry. That's 10. And 11, I hate it when you're not around.
So I was right. The perm's in there. Right?
Yeah. That's stupid, dumb haircut. Now, putting aside the fact that I think this is actually a terribly written poem for someone who's supposedly really good at English.
She
in
asked
her
about
English
the
class.
contempt.
Yeah. But I don't know. How do you feel that this all works together?
Oh, that's a broad question. I'm still moved when you were reciting it. And you don't hold a candle to Julia Stiles.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I apologize for having to be so blunt. I don't know. It's poorly written, but I think I was picturing her reading it and the genuine feeling like it's
one of those things where the feeling behind the lines are better than the actual lines themselves.
And also this thought that this is not her trying to complete a Shakespearean essay. This is her declaring that she made a mistake.
Yeah, hard on the line.
Maybe not a mistake, but that she has that she felt the connection that transcended his transgression. Mm-hmm. Ooh. That work?
That works. That's a good soundbite. So David Krumholtz, who plays Michael in the film, he's the friend to Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who would be like in a bunch of films.
Serenity.
Yeah. He wrote a piece for Vulture explaining why he thought the movie worked so well. And so, we were talking about how we thought that all the characters kind of interacted really well with one another. He stated that the entire cast became fast friends. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt turned me on to Fish, and I turned him on to Wu-Tang. The actor wrote, Gabriel Union had us in stitches. Julia Stiles brought her own brand of Soho-bred artistic intellectualism at only 17. Larissa Oleynik's laughter filled the room, and we marveled at the toneness of Andrew Keegan's muscles. A great sport. Filming began without Heath Ledger, and the cast worried how his presence would change the dynamic. And this was a concern that was remedied a few days later when he arrived, and we found yet another comrade in sensibility. The group, with Heath, only got stronger. Before I knew it, the cast was experiencing what I've since found to be all too rare, a unified chemistry throughout the ensemble without a single bad apple in the bunch. We all agreed that we were having the best summer of our lives.
I'm just listening to you read that and hearing it in his voice.
Yeah, right.
Because in every movie he's in, he's got this pretentious, very developed, what do you call it?
Jewish.
Wow. Yeah.
The table dance scene is what led Julia Stiles landing the lead role in Save the Last Dance.
She was working it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was surprising too.
Kind of comes out of nowhere a little bit, but she's drinking and she loses herself a bit.
Well, what's great about that scene too, compared to many other awkward moments, is like it actually looks like she might be able to save that last dance. It's not just a really awkward thing where she's losing her mind. You get that little sense that she used to be the something else other than
there's that hint of like
she's the party.
She's not revealing everything that she could about herself.
She's twerk.
Here's the last one. During a Q&A with screenwriters, Karen McCullough revealed where the title came from. The title is based on a diary entry that I made in high school, she explained. I had a boyfriend named Anthony that I was frequently unhappy with. I made a list called Things I Hate About Anthony. When Kirsten Smith, her writing partner, and I decided to write this, I went through all of my high school diaries to bone up on the angsty memories. And when I told her about that list, she was, that's our title.
We don't use bone in that context anymore. I think we should bone up more. I think the world needs more boning. We should bone it up. Like if there's anything wrong.
Dave, you and I, we can bone anytime.
I'm just saying, I think we're boning right now. We just gotta I lost.
Boy, our downloads are going up. They're going through the roof.
What did she say? What I don't even remember what boning means.
She was boning up on her angsty memories.
Oh, that's right. We got to keep boning it. Yeah, let's bone it up.
We're going to bone it. Let's see what we're going to be watching next week. Okay, well, the machine has come through with us here. We get to watch next week The Matrix.
Of course.
Going to be revisiting The Matrix, which I think I only watched like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Have we ever left?
Have we ever left? We're all part of the simulation, I suppose. Anyways, so how is that list coming? I asked you to write all the 10 things you loved about me before we started recording here today. So what's the number one?
I'm still looking for a pencil.
Oh.
Yeah.
I gave you a pencil.
I needed it in a 2B lead. Yeah. It's easier to erase and make notes.
I mean, that's very Shakespeare appropriate.